Guys, Jeffrey Epstein equals toe tag. That's apparently the message that a journalist received when he began investigating Jeffrey Epstein back in the 90s. I'm going to tell you all about that. And maybe that's the real reason why President Donald Trump is really scared. That's what a guy was informed, and we're starting to look around, looking at the narrative, and something is not adding up. So what we have to do is we have to go backward, okay? We absolutely have to jump back into the 90s to really understand the full Epstein story. So let's do that. Welcome back to the Epstein Files. All right, you guys, I am very sorry that we dropped this series out of nowhere. I was kind of getting sued by the sitting president of France, so I got a little bit distracted. Anyway, where were we? Okay, where are we right now as a society is maybe a better question. We keep discussing this theme that I want to drill into your mind, this idea of the Midas touch, okay? People who just have an invisible hand, a hand of wealth and power that pulls them through the ranks while the rest of us are working hard, really trying to get A's, get into school, make sure we get a good job, pay down our debts. Other people are just having resumes created for them. They can be really dumb, actually, and still be allowed to become, I don't know, like the president of France or whatever. They're effectively just trained actors and actresses. We know that Emmanuel Macron was allegedly that individual. Jeffrey Epstein, we learned, was also this individual, right? Dalton School, pulled through the ranks, no background whatsoever in math or physics, but we're just told he was some sort of a savant. And of course, he didn't, or at least nobody can explain how he made billions of dollars, especially given the fact that he wasn't a genius. And he certainly didn't have the credentials to be in the rooms that he was in. But yeah, someone pulled him through and up the ranks. We've got to go back to the 90s, I told you guys. So let's go back to May, specifically, of 1997 in the United States. Where were you? Where were you? Because a lot was going on in 1997 in the United States. I had just turned 8 years old, and there was this really interesting thing that happened that you likely do not remember. Honestly, it was more of a crisis that happened. The NSA, right, had intercepted this really mysterious communication between an agent that was at the Israeli embassy and the head of the Mossad, this guy, Dan Yatam. Okay, so they intercept this communication between the two of them, and the NSA, our security agency, begins freaking out. And that's because the agent told Dan that the Israeli ambassador, a guy named Eliyahu Ben Elisar, was looking for a copy of a letter. Like, he wants a copy of a letter that the then Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, had apparently delivered to Yasser Arafat. Now, Yasser Arafat used to be the president of Palestine, okay? And so Israel's looking to intercept that communication. Like, what's the Secretary of State saying to Arafat? And this, by the way, was the day after Bibi Netanyahu and Arafat had signed what came to be known as the Hebron Accord, okay? I'm going to tell you about that in a second. So again, we have ourselves in the midst of this Israel-Palestine situation. But look, they came to an agreement. What's got Israel so stressed, right? Why are you so stressed that you're now trying to get in the middle of this communication between the White House and the Palestinian leader at the time? Now, according to the Washington Post, the exact language of that communication, and obviously we're translating this from Hebrew, was, quote, "The ambassador wants me to go to Mega." I want you to remember that, Mega, to get a copy of that letter. The Mossad head, Dan, then replied, "That's not why we use Mega." Instantly panic, as you can imagine, because that's a code name, Mega. Who the heck is Mega? What are they talking about? There's a Mega that can intercept communications. Also, why are they trying to use Mega to intercept, again, a communication between the White House and Yasser Arafat after a peace deal? Does that make any sense? Oh, yeah, it actually does make some sense, because those peace deal negotiations included a little bit of, come on, it's Israel, blackmail, obviously. I think I told you this, but I'm going to quickly recap. The story goes that Israel and Palestine were negotiating. Essentially, Israel had, as they always do, troops in Palestine, particularly this time they were in the West Bank, and they were negotiating pulling those troops out of the West Bank, okay? And Bill Clinton was hosting these negotiations in Maryland, and things were getting pretty heated between Arafat, Bill Clinton's, I'm the president of the United States, I've got power, here's what's going to happen. Bibi Netanyahu's like, what do you mean? We own the world. And it's just not looking good, okay? At least back when Palestine existed. He was the president of Palestine, Arafat. Anyways, Bibi Netanyahu during these negotiations takes Bill Clinton, the president of the United States, aside, and he asks him for the release of Jonathan Pollard, somebody that was also doing blackmail for Israel in the United States and was sentenced for getting caught assisting a foreign government. And what Bibi Netanyahu says to Bill Clinton when he pulls him aside, he's like, hey, don't worry, my friend. I just want to let you know that we have recordings between you and Monica Lewinsky, but we're going to throw them out. Wink. Could you imagine? President of the United States, if you've got power, your greatest ally takes you aside, and he's sort of like, I just want to let you know, we've got some recordings of you. They're a little frisky. You and an intern, it's a little frisky, but I'm your friend, and we're going to throw them out. Yeah, that's what went down. At least if the author, Dan Halper, is to be believed, that's how it all went down. And yeah, Bill Clinton, you can imagine, got the message. So it wasn't exactly a peaceful negotiation. It was probably more aptly described as a hostage situation. And Israel might have been feeling a little bit paranoid about what the White House was then sending in a letter to Palestinian reps following that sit down. Remarkably, though, the FBI's investigation, the NSA's investigation to identify who this mega was, a mole, apparently, at the highest levels of the White House, a mole that had access to President Bill Clinton and his immediate entourage, maybe even a member of his immediate entourage, suddenly they weren't interested in finding out who he was. The entire thing, the investigation, was quickly halted without any official explanation as to why that was. Now, 2 years later, author Gordon Thomas would explain the real reason why they stopped looking into Mega. He wrote this book, Gideon's Spies, and in that book, he explains that the Israelis then just further threatened the Clinton administration. They threatened to release the tapes of the communications between President Bill Clinton, and Monica Lewinsky if the hunt for Mega, codename Mega, did not stop. And once again, that was all it took. No more was heard about codename Mega anymore. Now, just a year after this NSA panic, in May of 1998, the Wall Street Journal publishes a very interesting article. It was published by journalist Lisa Miller, and it was titled, "Titans of Industry Join Forces to Work with Jewish Philanthropy."
They try to keep him down, but he always stays up. It's the hand of God upon him that makes him so tough. Well, look who's back. They call him Crazy Orange Hitler in the Renega hat. Like a phoenix from the ashes, a cat with 9 lives. A Hail Mary miracle, divinely devised. Stronger than Superman, the man of steel. Tougher than Rocky, making raw eggs a meal. We wore Atlas down, he was gonna retire. Trump sat him down and relit his fire.
And it revealed in that article that there was a group coming together that was called the Mega Group, which was a private club of Jewish billionaires that were paying $30,000 annually towards this exclusive membership, and that would be meeting in secret twice a year. And what their goal was, as displayed in that article, their goal was, quote, to achieve maximum impact on American policy toward Israel. Okay. Now, in 2001, an Israeli journalist named Israel Shamir revealed more about that exclusive group. He had this newsletter, and he mentioned that within the Mega Group, there was also indeed an individual that went by codename Mega. And this is what he wrote. He wrote, quote, "The president of the World Jewish Congress invited the 50 richest and most influential American Jews to a meeting in Manhattan. There was no press coverage, no neon lights, just a few lines in the newspapers. They agreed to launch a public relations program under the Orwellian code name Emet, which is truth in Hebrew, with the aim of influencing American public opinion regarding Israeli policy. These super rich call themselves the Mega Group. This name emerged 2 years ago as that of an Israeli mole at the highest levels of the American establishment. The espionage specialists were wrong. Mega was not an agent. He was the boss. Much more than the cabal forces, Mega is moving the needle in the Middle East. And it's not magic, it's money, lots of money. They don't run the United States or Israel, but they wield powerful influence. About that, 50 multi-billionaires united in a single network represent a real force in the world, he concluded. Now, it becomes even more interesting when you learn that the Mega Group was founded by two men. One of those men was Edgar Bronfman. For those of you who have not watched the beginning of this Jeffrey Epstein series, please go back, watch episode 1. Briefly to recap, Edgar Bronfman, that name keeps coming up. He was the guy that Epstein worked with on a mysterious bank transaction that got flagged by the SEC before the banking company went under. Bronfman was also the man that we learned was the president of the World Jewish Congress and was working with Robert Maxwell to negotiate Refusnik. Essentially, they were trying to get Russian Jews, trying to get the Russian government to allow Russian Jews to emigrate to Israel and live. So it was called the Refusnik crisis because at first the Russian government was refusing to do it. And then suddenly said, okay, fine, you can go to Israel. Probably a little money, a lot of money that made that happen. Anyways, back to the Mega Group. The other co-founder of that group was Les Wexner. Yes, Les Wexner. The key to Epstein's fortune. We know about Les Wexner. Which brings me back to Monica Lewinsky, the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Some details that maybe fell through the cracks, because what do you even remember about that scandal? Me personally, there are moments that are just kind of seared into your memory in the 90s or seared into your mind as your parents all huddled over a big screen TV. Definitively, the Monica Lewinsky scandal ranks pretty high. Like that's the O.J. Simpson trial. Monica Lewinsky scandal was like back-to-back news, and you just had parents that were just staring. Just what is going to happen with Bill Clinton? What is happening here? The cigar involved. This is crazy, right? And then at some point, I remember her kind of being reintroduced and us being told that everything kind of happened to her was unfair. She also had to sit down and provide testimony during that time about what had happened to her. I think we have a clip of that. Skylar, do you want to run that?
Did he make any representation to you about what you could say in that affidavit?
No.
What did you understand you would be saying in that affidavit to avoid testifying?
I believe I testified to this in the grand jury. In the best of my recollection, it was, to my mind, it was a range of things. I mean, it could either be something innocuous or could go as far as having to deny the relationship. Not being a lawyer nor having gone to law school was, I thought it could be anything.
Did he, at that point, suggest one version or the other version?
No, I didn't even mention that. So there wasn't a further discussion. There was no discussion of what would be in an affidavit.
Again, that's just showing you a random sample of her testifying. She had to testify during the impeachment hearings, obviously. And you see she's very presentable. She's well-spoken. There's a circus surrounding her, but she's composed. She is believable. She seems honest about what has taken place. And now, like I said, she's reemerged something, I would say, of a feminist icon. People look back and they go, wow, this poor intern. Everyone hated her because they loved Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a very loved president, left and right. He was the cool president. Then you have this intern, and maybe in the 90s we were too harsh on women, and people looked at her like she was a hoe, right? And people are revisiting going, that is just really not fair. I vaguely remember thinking, okay, then she went overseas and kind of hid. Her whole life was ruined by this scandal, which makes sense why she's kind of resurfacing. And Skylar, weren't you telling me that she even has her own podcast? Yeah, show me a little bit, like, what's the name of the podcast? It's kind of about, like, her coming back, right? Like, it's Reclaiming. What a good brand. What a good name, Reclaiming with Monica Lewinsky. You know you feel that right now. You're watching this and you're like, oh, girl, yes, reclaim your name. Reclaim your name, Monica. They did you so dirty. That's not fair to you. And to really show how much they put behind this kind of reclaiming campaign, she recently sat down on the Call Her Daddy podcast. And that's appropriate, obviously, because the Call Her Dad podcast is all about women and having sex and tons of partners and being, powerful in their sex capades. Anyways, here's a clip of Monica Lewinsky recently sitting down with Alex Cooper. Take a listen.
Can you explain how the name calling and the slut shaming slowly started to chip away at the way you felt about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think I can't say this for everybody who gets involved in a relationship with someone who's, I'm trying to think of the right way to say it, but it's like, I think not everybody who has an affair feels this way, but I think a lot of people, especially young women who get involved in affairs, it already starts with a lack of self-esteem and self-worth. Mm-hmm. So I already had issues. It was this, it's kind of your worst nightmare of like all the worst things that you think about yourself and say to yourself, you then start to have reflected and amplified by the whole world. And so it was, if it hadn't been for my family continuing to remind me of my true self, and then eventually when I was able to have my friends come in, I don't think I would have been able to make it through.
Stunning, brave, all the right words there. Slut shaming someone for being a slut, which we shouldn't do, I guess. We should support it. And Monica Lewinsky very much is sounds like she's a victim in this story. And gratefully, her family was there to get her through it. But like, who exactly is her family? Have we even thought about that? Is this a fair question to ask? I have questions. Monica Lewinsky, if you're watching this, I'd love to sit down with you because now I have a lot of questions. A little bit about her. Monica Lewinsky was born to a Lithuanian and German Jewish family. And she comes across very believable, which makes sense because she was a theater kid. As we're learning in politics, a lot of these people were theater kids. She loved theater. Loved her high school experience being involved in drama so much that after her high school graduation, she attended college, but then while she was in college, still opted to work in the drama department at Beverly Hills High School. And in 1992, she began
in coastal zones, plastic
an affair, not with President Clinton yet. She actually began her first affair with a married man. In 1992, she decided to begin an affair with her former high school drama instructor. So, she really liked the drama club, you know what I mean? And this affair was not short-lived, by the way. It went on for 5 years. So if I'm thinking of the timeline here, that definitely was going on at the same time as she was having an affair with Bill Clinton. She was also having an affair with this drama instructor. Now, interestingly enough, her mother was involved in a totally bonkers sexual scandal as well, pertaining to a random book. Her mother uses a pen name. She wrote a book about the three tenors. I'm not going to get too far into that, but suffice to say that when the Monica Lewinsky-Bill Clinton scandal broke, people then began realizing that her mom had written this weird book, a biographical book about the tenors, and it contained hints of an affair that was similar to the affair that her daughter was having with the President of the United States. So it got weird and it got wacky. And the editor said that they actually gutted portions of the book that were like strangely and explicitly sexual. Okay, whatever. What's interesting is the fact that despite Monica having a degree in psychology, which she achieved, a bachelor's degree in psychology, and a background in theater, she kind of mysteriously gets this job interning, not just interning at the White House, but interning for the chief of staff for the President of the United States. Now, I can tell you this. That chief of staff's name was Leon Panetta, and he would go on to become the director of the CIA and later the Secretary of Defense. And I can also assure you that you don't get those internships at that level unless you know somebody, pardon. And I know this because I know people who have gotten those internships. At that level, there's somebody's daughter, there's somebody's granddaughter, there's somebody who gave a ton of money to the campaign. That's who is packed that closely around the president. You don't just like write in, I applied to an internship at the White House and I randomly got it. And look, I'm working for like the number 3 most powerful person in the United States. It doesn't work like that. Okay. It's all politics and nepotism. And kind of reflecting on our conversation there with the Call Her Daddy host, I am not sure if the narrative that she was like a nobody victim thereafter, thrown into obscurity, is entirely truthful, because she then, right after the affair happened, began designing handbags. Again, despite no background in fashion, despite having a degree in psychology, she has an affair with the President of the United States, and then she just starts just designing handbags. And I want to be clear, the bags are objectively not beautiful. And I can show you guys. I think it's not the most beautiful bag that I've ever seen. I'll tell you why that's important. Take a listen to this YouTuber who's kind of going backwards and reviewing her line of purses.
Monica quickly became kind of scorned and pariah in society after that, and actually had a lot of trouble kind of just existing. And now she does some anti-bullying campaigns and stuff like that. But she lived kind of in solitude for a while, and one of the things that she ended up doing when she was kind of outcast was starting to create her own line of handbags. Now, I always thought these were kind of funny at the time because they seemed just like a cash grab to me. It seemed like something that someone was doing at home and they were looking for a side hustle, and what do I have? What can I do? Oh, I can sew, I can buy fabric and sell some stuff online. So she created a line of bags called The Real Monica, and right here on the back of this one it says, "Made especially for you by Monica." I don't know how she knew she was going to make it for me, but she did, and that's the trademark.
Okay, so you see the bags, not the most beautiful bags I've ever seen, and it wasn't a hobby, because despite those bags looking, pretty tacky, they got picked up by arguably the most luxurious high-end retailer, Henry Bendel. Are you familiar with that name? I'm very familiar with it because I worked in fashion for a bit in New York, and I'm just going, literally, how? Like, that was a very, very high-end luxury department store. And they went to Monica and said, "These bags, amazing. We'll sell them. We'll sell them for you." And then she gets into Nordstrom. I mean, this is totally crazy. How is that possible that Henry Bendel picked up these bags? It's giving kind of Hand of Midas, if I'm being honest with you. And who was the Midas that picked up these bags? Oh, I know who it was. It was Les Wexner. Yeah, the guy who handed over his empire to Jeffrey Epstein, the Victoria's Secrets guy, who then owned L Brands. And under L Brands, under his stewardship, they owned Henry Bendel. So they were the ones that went to her and said, "We are going to pick up this bag and, put it in high-end, luxurious retail stores." So to recap here, Benjamin Netanyahu somehow got a hold of many sexual recordings between Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton. He then uses those recordings to blackmail the president of the United States while negotiating. And then it turns out that the woman who was featured on those tapes, gets a job designing bags picked up by a luxurious store by a company that is being controlled really by Jeffrey Epstein, because it was being controlled by Jeffrey Epstein at that time. He handed over his keys to Jeffrey Epstein, who happened to be in the business of blackmailing politicians. Yeah, who was mega, who had proximity to Bill Clinton. Now, a little bit more regarding Les Wexner. Like Jeffrey Epstein, his rise also shrouded in mystery, financial mystery, a few untimely deaths. In fact, there was this journalist, Robert Fitrakis, who was investigating Wexner, and he explained, quote, "When I reported on his connection with Jeffrey Epstein in the late 1990s, I received a letter from a certain skyhawk who simply wrote, 'Jeffrey Epstein equals toe tag.'" Yeah, toe tag. Put it on your toe. When you're dead, you will die if you investigate Jeffrey Epstein. Should I be concerned? Okay, let's just throw it to a couple of sponsors, and we'll jump back in and tell you a little bit more about Les Wexner.